Anti-gravitational pull
Teleportation. The ability to dematerialize in one place and rematerialize somewhere else. It's a concept that's haunted science fiction since the 1800s. From Mark Twain's Connecticut Yankee vanishing through time and space to medieval England, to Star Trek's transporter pads casually disassembling crew members molecule by molecule. Teleportation promises the ultimate freedom. Liberation from distance, from borders, from the tyranny of physical space itself. The ultimate shortcut. But it is a truth universally acknowledged that when we talk about shortcuts in science fiction, they never come free. Every teleportation story eventually asks the same unsettling questions. What happens to you in the space between? If you're broken down into atoms and rebuilt somewhere else, are you still you? And what if something goes wrong in that infinite, impossible moment when you don't exist anywhere at all?
Malfunction. Malfunction.
So here at the Cinematic Science Lab, we're dedicating an entire trilogy of experiments to one of sci-fi's most audacious and most terrifying ideas. 3 films and 3 radically different visions of what it means to break the laws of physics. One through the lens of body horror, one as an action-packed adventure, and one as a meditation on identity itself. By the end, we'll discover whether teleportation is humanity's greatest dream or its worst nightmare. But first, we have to answer one big question. Could teleportation ever be more than fiction? In this opening chapter, we begin not with hope, but with horror. We start where ambition meets hubris, where scientific genius collides with the chaos of the natural world, and where one man's breakthrough becomes his undoing. Welcome to 1986. Welcome to David Cronenberg's Laboratory of Flesh and Transformation. Welcome to The Fly. In The Fly, teleportation isn't a futuristic convenience. It's not a ticket to the stars or a solution to gridlock traffic. It's a catastrophic mistake. We begin with George Langelaan's 1957 short story, a pulpy, shocking tale that would be adapted twice, first in 1958 and then again in 1986. Same premise, same tragic core. But Cronenberg's 1986 adaptation transforms this pulp fiction into something far more intimate and far more unbearable. This is the story of a brilliant mind chasing immortality through innovation, a bold experiment that promises to change everything, and an accidental passenger no one saw coming. When a common housefly, an insect so ordinary we barely notice it, slips undetected into the teleportation pod, Seth Brundle's machine does exactly what it's designed to do. It doesn't malfunction, it doesn't glitch, it works perfectly. But the machine doesn't just move matter from point A to point B. It reads it. It interprets it. And in that split second of molecular translation, it makes a choice. It fuses man and insect at the genetic level. What begins as humanity's greatest leap forward turns into a slow, agonizing unraveling, a metamorphosis, cell by cell, day by day, piece by piece. And Cronenberg doesn't let you look away. He makes you watch as ambition curdles into body horror, as genius rots into something unrecognizable. But before we witness the transformation, we need to understand the machine that started it all. What is Seth Brundle's telepod actually doing? Is it scanning matter and recreating it? Transmitting information? Or something stranger? Something that blurs the line between original and copy? Could a real teleportation device ever be built? Or is it purely the domain of fiction? And then there's the question that haunts every version of this story, from Langelaan's original nightmare to Cronenberg's tragic masterpiece. Why does everyone who stepped into the pod lose something they can never get back? Even when the teleportation works and nothing goes wrong, there is a cost, an erasure, a violation of some fundamental law we can't quite name. This is teleportation the Cronenberg way, where science doesn't conquer nature, but collides with it, where technology doesn't serve its creator, it consumes him. So, let's open the pod doors and see what comes out.
Now you tell me, am I different somehow?
At first glance, teleportation in The Fly seems almost elegant, simple even. Step into one pod, close your eyes, wait for the hum of machinery and flash of light, and then reappear across the room in another pod, intact and unharmed. It's seductive in its simplicity, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. So, what's actually happening inside those pods? What is Seth Brundle's machine, or any version of this technology, really doing to the human body? Across all incarnations of this story, the fundamental concept remains unchanged. Teleportation via disintegration and reintegration. You don't travel, you're taken apart. Every atom, every molecule, every microscopic structure that makes you, disassembled at the point of origin, converted into data or energy or something in between, transmitted across space, and then reconstructed at the destination. In Langelaan's original story, the process is treated as pure engineering, matter to energy conversion, transmitted like a radio signal. Cold, clinical, precise. In Kurt Newman's 1958 film adaptation, it's visualised with sparking electrical coils and crackling cathode rays, teleportation as brute force science. Yet even in both of these versions, the danger is immediate. The scientist tests the device on himself and doesn't realise a fly has entered the chamber. The result? His head and one arm are swapped with the fly's. But David Cronenberg takes this process even further. He makes it biological. You see, his telepods feature computational interpretation. They don't just scan matter, they understand it, they learn it. They digest the genetic information like a living organism reads DNA. And when something goes wrong, when that housefly enters the equation, the machine doesn't reject the error. It solves it, it integrates it, it creates something new. Because to the machine, there is no mistake. There is only input and output. So here's the question we need to answer before we can go any further. Could this actually work? Not in the movies universe, we already know it works there, but here, in our reality. Well, let's start with the machine itself, and here's a rare outcome at the Cinematic Science Lab. This is actually one of the most believable aspects of the entire teleportation process.
The world's largest microwave oven. I'm glad I didn't give you my Rolex, if I had a Rolex.
Not the mutation, nor the genetic fusion, not even the idea that matter can be scanned and rebuilt atom by atom. No, what's believable is the failure. The failure of the system to understand what it's actually doing. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about computational systems, whether we're talking about Brundle's telepod in 1986 or the AI we're building today. A computer, no matter how advanced, no matter how powerful, can only execute its programming. It doesn't think, it doesn't question, it doesn't pause to consider whether what it's about to do makes sense. It just does. And if the programming doesn't account for edge cases, for biological nuisance, for the messy reality of cross-species contamination, for genetic incompatibility, for the emergent phenomenon we call consciousness, then the machine will make irreversible decisions with absolutely clinical precision. No hesitation, no second guessing, and no moment of doubt. Think about what Brundle's telepod is being asked to do. Scan the contents of pod A, break down everything inside it into transmittable information, send that data across space, and reconstruct it perfectly in Pod B. Simple, right? Except the machine encounters two distinct genetic blueprints in Pod A, human DNA and insect DNA. So what does it do? It doesn't throw an error, nor abort the process. It simply solves the problem. It makes a choice, and the choice it makes is horrifyingly logical. If there are two sets of genetic information present, and the goal is to teleport what's in the pod, then the solution is to integrate both, to fuse them at the molecular level, create a singular, unified organism from the available raw materials, one input and one output. The machine isn't cruel nor malicious, it's just being thorough. This is what makes the horror so potent and so plausible.
Oh, that's disgusting.
We're watching what happens when a system designed to be correct encounters a scenario it was never designed to handle. The code works perfectly, and that's exactly the problem. So we can conclude that this computational interpretation element is both logical and plausible in the real world. But what about the teleportation process itself? Well, teleportation as imagined in The Fly is fundamentally data-driven. You are information, your body is a blueprint, and your consciousness is code waiting to be compiled elsewhere. But what happens when the data is corrupted? What if the file you're transmitting has a fly in the ointment?
Drink deep or taste not the plasma spring. See what I'm saying?
The science here is particularly chilling because it's not pure fantasy. It's rooted in real-world speculation at the bleeding edge of what we're already attempting. Now, to be clear, we haven't teleported people in real life. We haven't even teleported something as complex as a single cell. But we have achieved something called quantum teleportation, the ability to transmit the quantum state of one particle to another, sometimes across vast distances, from laboratory to laboratory, even from Earth to orbiting satellites. It sounds miraculous, and in many ways, it is. But here's the catch. Quantum teleportation is not matter transmission. It is state transmission. You're not moving a particle from point A to point B. You're taking two already existing particles that are quantum entangled, linked in a way that transcends ordinary space, and you're transferring the quantum information of one onto the other. The original particle doesn't vanish and reappear, it stays where it is. Its quantum state is simply copied. It's a whisper between particles, but it's not a body moving through space. To teleport a living organism, a human being with roughly 36 trillion cells, each containing billions of atoms, each atom vibrating in specific quantum states, you would need advances so staggering they make our current technology look like Stone Age tools. You'd need scanning resolution precise enough to map every particle, every bond, and every quantum fluctuation that defines you at a specific moment in time. You'd need storage capacity vast enough to contain the complete informational blueprint of a human body. We're talking exabytes, zettabytes, perhaps even more. You'd need energy output on a scale we can barely fathom, enough to disassemble matter at the atomic level and reassemble it with perfect fidelity. And perhaps most troubling of all, you'd need an understanding of how consciousness works. Not just neural activity or synaptic patterns, but the continuous thread of subjective experience, the you that persists from moment to moment. Because it's not just about copying atoms into the right configuration, it's about preserving you, your memories, accumulated over years, your awareness, flickering in the present moment, your sense of self, that intangible thing that says, I am me. And in The Fly, that self is slowly overwritten. Not instantly, nor mercifully. Cronenberg denies us that small comfort. It begins almost as a gift. Seth Brundle gains improved strength, sharper reflexes, enhanced stamina, a buzz of euphoria, a sense of becoming more than human. And Seth thinks he's been perfected, purified, upgraded. But the price is already being extracted. First, it's small things. A tooth comes loose, then another. Fingernails loosen and fall away like autumn leaves. Then the skin, drying, cracking, peeling. Then it's the thoughts, the impulses, the instincts that feel less and less human. And eventually, dare we say inevitably, his sense of identity itself begins to dissolve. The man who stepped into the pod ceases to exist, molecule by molecule, replaced by something that was never meant to be. So back to the original question. Is this teleportation? Yes. Fundamentally, yes. Matter is scanned at the atomic level. The information is transmitted, however briefly, however instantaneously, across space. And a body is reconstructed in the destination pod with atomic precision. Even when the fly contaminates the process, even when the genetic fusion occurs, the mechanism is still teleportation. The machine did exactly what teleportation is supposed to do: disassemble, transmit, and reassemble. And the fact that it assembled the wrong thing doesn't make it less teleportation. It makes it failed teleportation. Catastrophically, horrifyingly failed, but teleportation nonetheless. But could we ever actually do this? Could human teleportation be real? Here's where we have to be honest. With our current understanding of physics, no, not even close. The technological barriers alone are staggering. We're talking about technology that's not just decades away, but potentially centuries away. If it's even possible at all within the laws of physics as we understand them. But the deeper problem isn't technological, it's philosophical. Because even if we could build the machine, even if we could scan every atom and reconstruct them perfectly somewhere else, we're left with the question that haunts every teleportation story ever told. Is the person who stepped out of the destination pod the same person who stepped into the origin pod? Or did the original die, disintegrated, destroyed, erased, while a perfect copy with all their memories and thoughts intact opened their eyes in a new location, believing that they had survived? The machine in The Fly doesn't answer this question. It makes it worse. Because what comes out of Brundle's telepod isn't him anymore. Not entirely. And not for long. And that's the warning embedded in this story. A warning about the irreversibility of transformation. About trusting systems we don't fully understand. About the cost of skipping steps in our rush towards transcendence. Because once the process starts, once you step into that pod and the sequence initiates, there's no undo button. No going back through the pod to reverse what's been done. The transmission is one way. And there's no telling what might come out of the other side. Not until the door opens. Not until you see what you've become.
You smell bad.
I've never been much of a bather.
So let's imagine, just for a moment, that you're a genius scientist. You've got a vast warehouse, unlimited funding, no safety protocols and no ethics committees, no oversight whatsoever. Just you, your ambition, and just enough hubris to believe that you can rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in your spare time. Could you actually build a working teleportation machine? Let's break it down, step by terrifying step. Step 1. Scan every single atom. Sounds straightforward, right? Just scan the person. Get all the data. Except here's the problem. The human body contains approximately 7 octillion atoms. That's a 7 followed by 27 zeros. Every single one of them matters. Every hydrogen atom in your DNA, every carbon atom in your proteins, every oxygen molecule flowing through your bloodstream at this exact moment. To capture all of that information, to know not just where each atom is, but what type it is, how it's bonded to its neighbours, what quantum state it's in. You'd need a scanner with resolution beyond anything we've ever built or ever theoretically designed. Take your average MRI machine, which seems incredibly precise when it's imaging your brain. In this context, it's like trying to measure the individual rivets of the Eiffel Tower using only a magnifying glass and good vibes. Current cutting-edge scanning technology, like cryo-electron microscopy, which won the 2017 Nobel Prize for Chemistry, can image individual proteins. But a human body has roughly 20,000 different types of proteins, with trillions upon trillions of individual protein molecules, each folded in specific three-dimensional configurations that determine their function. And we haven't even got to your brain yet. Your brain alone contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of other neurons through something like 100 trillion synaptic connections. But simply mapping the physical structure, the connector, isn't enough. You'd have to capture the state of each neuron at the moment of scanning, the electrochemical gradients, the neurotransmitter concentrations at every synapse, the firing patterns, the specific proteins being expressed in each cell at that exact microsecond. You'd need to capture your thoughts, your memories, the subconscious processes running in the background, the dream you half remembered from last Tuesday, that awkward thing that you said in 8th grade that still makes you cringe at 2 a.m. All of it, perfectly, and simultaneously. You'd need to scan a living, conscious human being down to the quantum level, capturing the position and state of every single subatomic particle without killing them in the process. Which brings us to a rather significant problem, known as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This isn't just a practical limitation. This is a fundamental law of quantum mechanics. You cannot simultaneously know both the exact position and exact momentum of a particle. The more precisely you measure one, the less precisely you can know the other. So, even in theory, even with infinite technological advancement, creating a perfect quantum level scan of a human being might be physically impossible. But sure, let's say you somehow manage it. Now what?
Cheeseburger.
Step 2. Transmit the data. Now you need to transmit this information from point A to point B. We're talking about more data than exists in all of human civilization combined. Conservative estimates for encoding a complete human being at the atomic level run into the range of 10 to the power of 30 to 10 to the power of 45 bits of information. Now, that's not gigabytes, it's not terabytes, it's not even petabytes or exabytes. We're talking about a number so large that it makes all the data on the internet look like your weekly grocery list. Just for context, as of 2024, the entire digital universe, every photo, every video, every database, every website, everything stored on every hard drive on Earth contains roughly 10 to the power of 23 bits. You'd need to transmit information equivalent to millions or billions of entire internets. And you'd need to do it fast, because the person you scanned, they're currently disintegrated. They're in pieces. They're waiting in whatever state waiting while disassembled means, to be put back together. You'd need transmission speeds that make our fastest fibre optic cables look like carrier pigeons. You'd need bandwidth that doesn't exist, and storage buffers that violate thermodynamic limits. You'd need faster than light data transfer and an interdimensional server farm.
What, are you kidding?
No, I'm serious.
Step 3. Rebuild the body. Now comes the truly impossible part. You have to take all of that information and use it to reconstruct a living human being, atom by atom, molecule by molecule. This is 3D printing on a scale that defies comprehension, and it has to be perfect. One misplaced carbon atom in a DNA base pair? You just introduced a mutation. Maybe it's harmless, maybe it causes cancer in 30 years' time. Or maybe it kills them instantly. One protein misfolded in the wrong configuration? That's how you get prion diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, neurodegenerative nightmares where your brain slowly destroys itself. One error in the precise geometry of a heart valve? One incorrectly positioned ion channel in a cardiac cell? Sudden cardiac arrest the moment they step out of the pod. And this isn't even considering consciousness. Somehow, in the process of assembling 86 billion neurons in the correct spatial configuration, you also have to reboot the brain. You have to restart conscious experience to preserve continuity of self. The scanning killed them. The reconstruction has to bring them back, not just alive, but as themselves. It's not just improbable, it's virtually impossible with our current understanding of physics, biology, and information theory. And yet it gets even worse. Let's say, somehow, impossibly, your machine works. Let's say you've solved every technical problem. You step into the pod, the scan is perfect, the transmission is flawless, and the reconstruction is atom for atom identical. You step out on the other side with no mutations, no flies, no errors whatsoever. But here's the question that keeps philosophers awake at night. Are you still you? Because the original you, the you that stepped into the origin pod, was disassembled, disintegrated, destroyed. The person stepping out of the destination pod has all your memories. They believe they're you. Or did you die the moment you were scanned, while a perfect copy, indistinguishable in every measurable way, opened their eyes in a new location, inheriting your life without ever knowing that they are a replacement? This is a variation of the continuity of consciousness problem, and it's been debated since ancient Greece. If you have to die to arrive, did you actually go anywhere? Or did you just commit the cleanest, most efficient suicide in the history of science fiction, while someone who isn't you, but who will never know that they're not you, takes over your life?
Don't know, I've gone cross-eyed.
In Cronenberg's The Fly, Seth Brundle doesn't bother with most of these problems. He doesn't scan every atom. He can't. He doesn't have that kind of precision, and he knows it. Instead, he does something far more elegant and far more dangerous. He teaches his computer to understand flesh. He doesn't map every molecule. He trains his telepod's AI to recognize biological patterns, to understand what a human body is at a fundamental level, and to synthesize what it should look like on the outside. It's an approximation, a sophisticated pattern recognition, and it works brilliantly until it doesn't. Because the machine doesn't actually understand biology, it can't. It just recognizes patterns and makes assumptions based on its training. So when a housefly enters the pod, when the system suddenly encounters two distinct sets of genetic information instead of one, it doesn't throw an error. It doesn't alert Brundle that something's wrong. It just adapts. It treats the problem as a puzzle to be solved. Two organisms? Then integrate them, splice the DNA, create something new from the available biological material. The fly isn't seen as contamination. It's seen as data, and the machine processes it accordingly. The horror isn't that the machine malfunctioned. The horror is that it worked exactly as designed.
I seem to be stricken by a disease with a purpose, wouldn't you say?
So, could teleportation one day be possible? Maybe, theoretically, in some distant future where we've solved problems we can't even properly articulate yet. But not like this. Not with a pod in a warehouse. Not with shortcuts in the code. Not with an AI making assumptions about what a human body should look like. And definitely not with a fly. Because in every version of The Fly, from Langelaan's original story through Cronenberg's masterpiece, the fundamental problem is the same. The machine works too well and understands too little. It executes its programming with perfect precision, but it lacks wisdom, context, the ability to recognize when something has gone catastrophically wrong. It can't say stop. It can't say this isn't right. It can only say processing complete. And once you push that button, once the sequence initiates, once you've committed yourself to the transmission, you're not coming out the same. Even if nothing goes wrong, even if the teleportation is technically flawless, even if every atom ends up in the right place, because you'll always know the original you was destroyed, and the person who stepped out of that pod, they're someone new, someone who inherits your memories, your life, your identity, but maybe, just maybe, not your soul.
Ready for a demonstration, kids?
My God.
You'd think watching The Fly would be enough to stop anyone from ever stepping into a teleportation pod. The body horror, the existential dread, the gradual loss of everything that makes you human. Surely that would be sufficient warning. But history has taught us one undeniable truth. If there's a terrifying scientific idea, someone, somewhere will probably try it anyway. So the question becomes, has anyone actually attempted human teleportation? Over the decades, there have been countless hoaxes, DIY experiments, and performance art stunts claiming to teleport objects, animals, or even people. One memorable example, a self-proclaimed inventor in the early 2000s claimed he had developed a working teleporter using tachyon coils and plasma containment fields. He posted videos online, he gave interviews, and he promised demonstrations. Turns out, it was just a strobe light and a fog machine in his garage. These weren't serious scientific attempts. They were either deliberate frauds, misunderstandings of quantum mechanics, or conceptual art projects that got out of hand. No legitimate research institution, no credible physicist, no one with actual understanding of the science has ever claimed to teleport a human being or even come close, because they know it's impossible with our current technology. Which brings us to the one form of teleportation that is real. Quantum teleportation is a real thing. It's just not what science fiction promised you. You're not moving matter, you're not transporting physical objects, you're moving information. Specifically, quantum states between entangled particles. You take two particles that are quantum mechanically entangled, linked in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of distance. You can then transfer the quantum state of a third particle onto one of the entangled pair, and that state appears on the other entangled particle. In 2017, Chinese scientists successfully teleported the quantum state of a photon from Earth to the Messier satellite in orbit, a distance of over 1,400 kilometers. This was published in the journal Science and represented a genuine breakthrough in quantum communication. Sounds amazing, right? But here's the catch. Nothing physically moved. No people, no flies, not even a single atom travelled from Earth to space. The satellite didn't receive a new astronaut, it didn't even receive a new photon. It received information. The quantum state of a photon that already existed on the satellite was changed to match the state of a photon on Earth. This kind of teleportation isn't going to get you to the kitchen faster. It's not going to eliminate your commute. It's not even going to move your coffee mug from one table to the other. It's like emailing your mood to space. Incredibly useful for quantum computing, absolutely terrible for brunch.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
So what about the genetic fusion at the heart of The Fly? Has anyone actually tried to merge human and animal DNA? Sort of, yes. And it's more common than you might think. Scientists have created what they call chimeras, organisms containing cells or genetic material from two different species. These aren't mad science experiments conducted in abandoned warehouses. They're legitimate research happening at major universities and research institutions with extensive ethical oversight and regulatory approval. Here are some examples of real chimeric research. In 2017, scientists at the Salk Institute published research in the journal Cell, where they injected human stem cells into pig embryos and implanted them in surrogate sows. The goal was to see if human organs could eventually be grown inside animals for transplantation, addressing the critical shortage of donor organs. Researchers have transplanted human neurons and glial cells into mice brains to study neurological diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Some of these mice have brains containing significant numbers of human cells, not enough to make them think like humans, but enough to model human brain diseases more accurately. In 2018, scientists at Stanford University created sheep embryos containing human cells, again with the long-term goal of growing human-compatible organs. But here's what's critical to understand. None of them have turned into brundlefly. These aren't human-animal hybrids with mixed consciousness or identity. They're research tools for carefully controlled genetic modifications conducted under strict ethical guidelines. But let's be honest, once you start blending species at the genetic level, the ethics get complicated. Where's the line between therapeutic research and playing God? At what point does a chimeric organism gain moral status? These aren't abstract philosophical questions. They're real dilemmas facing ethics boards right now. This is exactly why modern gene editing, such as CRISPR, synthetic biology, genetic modification, is surrounded by so much caution, regulation, and international debate. It's not just about what science can do, it's about what science might do by accident, or what it might do on purpose, without fully understanding the consequences. So, has anyone actually tried to teleport themselves like Seth Brundle does in The Fly? No, not even close, not seriously, and not with real science. But give it a few decades, an overconfident billionaire with too much money and not enough oversight, a warehouse full of repurposed medical equipment, and an unshakable belief that regulations are for lesser minds, we might be one accidental housefly away from fantasy becoming reality. The technology to scan, transmit, and reconstruct matter at the atomic level doesn't exist, but the hubris that would make someone try it anyway, that exists in abundance. And that's the real horror at the heart of The Fly. Not that the science is impossible, but that someone, someday, might try it anyway, and won't notice the fly until it's far, far too late.
I know an old lady who swallowed a fly. Perhaps she'll die.
Let's be brutally honest. The moment someone steps into a teleportation pod in The Fly, any version of The Fly, their fate is sealed. Whether it's the crisp mechanical efficiency of the 1958 original, the slow burn biological dread of Cronenberg's 1986 masterpiece, or the genetically cursed nightmare of the 1989 sequel. These stories all agree on one fundamental truth. Nobody walks away from this clean. In Kurt Newman's 1958 film, scientist Andre Delambre's transformation is immediate and absolute. One moment, he's a man stepping into his experimental teleportation chamber. The next moment, he emerges with the head and left arm of a housefly, while somewhere in his laboratory, a fly with a tiny human head and arm desperately tries to escape a spider's web. There's no mutation process here. It's a clean surgical swap of body parts between two organisms that happen to occupy the same space during transmission. Andre doesn't slowly lose his humanity. He loses it instantly. His human mind is trapped inside a fly's head, complete with compound eyes and mandibles. He can't speak, he can barely communicate. He covers his grotesque new form with a black cloth and types desperate messages to his wife, Helene. He searches frantically for the fly carrying his human head, because maybe, if he can find it and go through the machine again, the swap can be reversed. But the fly is never found in time. And so, knowing he's losing his grip on his human consciousness, knowing he's beginning to think like an insect, Andre makes the only choice left. He asks his wife to kill him. She does so with a hydraulic press, in one of the most haunting murder scenes in 1950s cinema. Could he have survived? In the world of the film, with its 1950s understanding of atomic science and matter transmission, the swap happened cleanly, His body remained functional, just horrifyingly wrong. But in biological reality, absolutely not. A human brain cannot function in a fly's head. The neural pathways don't match. The sensory input from compound eyes would be incomprehensible. The respiratory system of a fly cannot supply oxygen to human neural tissue. Andre should have died the instant the swap occurred. The film gives him hours, maybe a day. Reality would not even give him seconds. George Langelaan's 1957 short story follows almost the exact same trajectory, but with a colder, more clinical tone. There's no gradual transformation, nor slow loss of humanity, just a sudden, permanent physical swap and the psychological unravelling that follows. Could he have survived? Same answer as before. In reality, the biological incompatibility would have killed him immediately. David Cronenberg's 1986 version takes a radically different and far more horrifying approach, a gradual transformation. At first, Seth Brundle feels better than ever, stronger, faster, more energetic, enhanced stamina. He's doing gymnastics in his apartment. He's confident. He's euphoric. He thinks the telepod has purified him. Then things start changing. First, coarse hairs sprout from his back. Then his skin begins to harden, forming patches of chitinous texture. His fingernails loosen and fall out. His teeth drop from his gums like rotten fruit. His ears fall off. His DNA is no longer human. It's not insect DNA either. It's something new, a fusion, an entirely new species that's never existed before. Brundle doesn't just mutate, he disassembles. His human form is being broken down, rewritten, replaced by something the telepod created when it merged his genetic code with the fly's. He vomits corrosive enzymes onto his food to digest it externally, like a fly. His strength increases to superhuman levels. His behaviour becomes erratic, aggressive, territorial. By the end, he's losing not just his body, but his mind, his humanity, his ability to recognise himself. Real-world medical translation? If this were somehow possible, Brundle's body would experience catastrophic system failure almost immediately. His immune system would recognise the foreign DNA and attack his own cells, triggering organ failure. Human and insect metabolisms are fundamentally incompatible. His body wouldn't know how to process nutrients or energy. As his brain tissues mutated, he'd experience seizures, hallucinations, cognitive disintegration, making him vulnerable to every infection, every pathogen, every microbial threat.
Please don't kill me.
By the film's final act, Seth Brundle isn't Brundle anymore. He's Brundlefly, a creature of pure genetic horror, more insect than man, barely clinging to fragments of his former identity. In a last-ditch effort to save himself, or perhaps to end his suffering, he attempts to fuse himself with his girlfriend Ronnie and their unborn child in the telepod, hoping the machine will somehow dilute the insect DNA with fresh human genetic material. The plan fails with the intervention of stathisporans, and the telepod cables are torn out mid-sequence. Brundle fuses with the telepod itself, metal, circuitry and flesh combining into a grotesque cybernetic biological monstrosity that's part man, part fly and part machine. At that point, there's only one mercy left: death. Ronnie raises a shotgun. Brundlefly, or what's left of Seth Brundle's consciousness, guides the barrel to his head with one remaining almost human hand, and she tearfully pulls the trigger. Could he have survived to that point? In the film's heightened reality, yes, Cronenberg stretches the transformation over weeks, giving us time to watch the horror unfold gradually. But in biological reality, Brundle should have been dead before his first fingernail hit the bathroom tile. The moment the genetic fusion occurred, his body would have begun shutting down within hours. The film gives us the illusion of slow decay for maximum dramatic and emotional impact. But in reality, the moment that fusion occurred in the telepod, Brundle's fate was sealed. His body couldn't handle it, his mind couldn't survive it, and the machine that created him, it just did what it was programmed to do.
I'm becoming Brundlefly.
So why do we keep returning to stories like The Fly? Why do we subject ourselves to body horror, to existential dread, to the visceral nightmare of watching a human being dissolve into something unrecognizable? Because science fiction horror serves a unique purpose. It takes our greatest ambitions, our dreams of transcending physical limitations, of conquering space and time, of becoming more than human, and asks a single terrifying question. What if we succeed and it's worse than failure? The Fly is a tragedy wrapped in horror, wrapped in a cautionary tale about the hubris of unchecked scientific ambition. It shows us the cost of skipping steps, of moving too fast, of trusting systems we don't fully understand, of believing that technology will solve problems it might actually create. And it does so through the most visceral, unavoidable method possible, by making us watch a man lose everything that makes him human, one piece at a time. We watch The Fly because it reminds us that progress without wisdom is dangerous, that innovation without ethics is monstrous, that power without understanding is catastrophic. To paraphrase another great Jeff Goldblum character, we got so preoccupied with whether or not we could that perhaps we should pause to think if we should.
Think they'll have that on the tour?
We watch this stuff because artists like Cronenberg and Langelaan before him understand something fundamental about horror. The scariest monsters aren't the ones that hunt us from the outside, they're the ones we create ourselves. The Fly endures because it speaks to something primal, our fear of losing ourselves, of transformation without consent, of becoming something we don't recognise in the mirror. And as long as we keep reaching for transcendence, as long as we keep building machines we don't fully understand, stories like The Fly will be there to remind us. Some doors, once open, can never be closed. Some transformations can never be reversed. And some flies should never have been in the pod in the first place. So, what have we learned from our journey into Seth Brundle's laboratory of horrors? Teleportation, as envisioned in The Fly, isn't a clean-cut sci-fi miracle. It's not humanity's next great leap forward. It's a warning, a worst-case scenario dressed up as scientific breakthrough. A cautionary tale about what happens when ambition outraces wisdom, when innovation outpaces understanding, when we build machines that can execute perfectly but comprehend nothing. Because when you disassemble the human body into pure information, when you reduce consciousness, memory, identity, and biology to transmittable data, you're not just risking technical failure, you're gambling with everything that makes you, you. You're betting that the machine can capture not just your atoms, but your essence, your continuity, your soul if such a thing exists. And you're trusting that when those atoms are reassembled, the person who opens their eyes on the other side is the same person who closed them at the start. Seth Brundle didn't die because he made a careless mistake. He didn't die because he was a bad scientist. He died because he trusted the machine to understand him, to know what a human being is at a fundamental level, to recognize the difference between intentional input and contamination, to distinguish between what should be preserved and what should be rejected. And the machine? It did exactly what it was programmed to do. It scanned, it transmitted, it reconstructed. It saw two sets of genetic information and made a choice, a logical, efficient, computational choice. And that's what makes it so much worse, because the horror of The Fly isn't that the machine failed, it's that the machine succeeded.
Human teleportation, molecular decimation, breakdown, and reformation is inherently purging. It makes a man a king. From the moment I walked out of the pod, I felt like $1 million. You know, I think I am going to have cannoli after all. Waiter!
So we've seen what happens when teleportation goes catastrophically wrong, when the machine makes a choice we didn't intend, when genetic fusion replaces genetic fidelity. But what if the machine does understand? What if teleportation actually works? Effortlessly, elegantly, safely. Next time, in the Cinematic Science Lab, we're stepping onto the transporter pad of the USS Enterprise to investigate a cleaner, more utopian vision of teleportation. Because Star Trek makes it look so easy, routine, mundane even. Captain Kirk and his crew dematerialise and rematerialise dozens of times per episode with no apparent concern, no hesitation, no existential dread. The technology is presented as solved, perfected, safe. But under the surface, there are still questions lurking in those shimmering transporter beams. Still the nagging suspicion that maybe, just maybe, Captain Kirk died the first time he stepped onto that pad, and every version since has been a perfect copy that still doesn't know it's a replacement. So join us next time as we ask, does Star Trek's transporters actually move you, or does it kill you and print a copy? What happens to your consciousness during transport? Why does nobody in Starfleet seem worried about this? And most importantly, would you step onto that pad?
Transporter room, come in, urgent.
If you've enjoyed this deep dive into science gone grotesquely, horrifyingly wrong, please give this video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part of our Teleportation Trilogy. And if you've got thoughts about teleportation, mutation, and what species you'd most definitely not want to merge with, drop them in the comments below. So until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and for the love of science, check the pod before you step inside.